Afternoon, learners. My name is Fezile Songkwani. I will be doing the summary with you this afternoon. I am an English educator from Lereko Secondary School in Bloemfontein. Summary writing will be our topic for this afternoon, and I think most of us have come across summary questions. Therefore, we will be looking into some of the skills we need when we do summary writing. Summary writing is a simplified, condensed account, and in a summary, you are required to reduce a given extract to a certain number of words. So a summary is a simplified, condensed account. You will be required at one point or another to reduce a given extract to a certain number of words. For example, if you are given a passage, a long passage, or an extract from a book or a magazine or even a newspaper, obviously you would be required to reduce it to a certain number of words. And let us quickly check some of the instructions that we need to follow when we do summary writing. Okay. First of all, when you do your summary, you will only focus on the main points. Okay. So, for example, if I give you a long sentence, in that particular sentence, focus on the main points because that is what you are going to use when you do your summary writing. The second thing that we need to focus on when we do our summary is to eliminate unnecessary information such as repetition, explanations, and descriptions. And things like quotations are also not needed when we do our summary. Okay? By repetition, I mean saying or mentioning something over and again. So in a summary, because we have a limited number of words that we are given, repetition is definitely not necessary. Okay? Explanations and descriptions are not needed in a summary because we are focusing on the main ideas. Quotations are also are also not welcomed or needed in a summary. First of all, let me go back to bullet number 1, or the first point I made about the main points. Where do we find our main points in a text? Okay, in a text, you will obviously have many sentences and a number of paragraphs. So the main points are found in paragraphs, or should I say in certain sentences. Okay, so for example, the first sentence of the paragraph or the last sentence of the paragraph usually has the main points, and then with those main points you can use them, interpret them in your own words so that you can have your summary ready. Also, by using your own words, you will indicate that you understand the passage. So when I give you a passage or a sentence even, it is important that you interpret it in your own words. This is to show that you understand what you have been given, and I will show you later on in the activity that we'll do just in a while. Okay, and then in a summary, or when we do summary writing, it is important to note that a summary is a reported statement, and it is therefore written in the past tense and reported speech. So you are reporting what happened in the past. Obviously, your sentences would not be in the present tense or in the future tense. Usually you must do it in the past tense, or as others call it, the reported speech. Okay, let us quickly look at the techniques for summarizing. First of all, you would have to read the passage carefully in order to gain a general overview of the content. We cannot begin to summarize what we don't understand. Therefore, it is important that we read the text thoroughly and gain an understanding of what we are talking about or what we are reading. Therefore, in that way, we can be able to tell others or summarize it to others what we have actually read. The second point that I have here with regard to techniques for summarizing, and I think this is also useful, you have to reread the passage and underline the key sentence in each paragraph. This is often the first sentence of the paragraph, and what follows merely substantiates it. So this actually supplements what I was talking about earlier on, that it is important to identify your main points, your main facts, or your main ideas. And in most cases, where do we find them? We find them in the first sentence of the paragraph or the last sentence of the paragraph. The senior learners in grade 10, 11, and 12, they usually call it the topic sentence. Those sentences which have have our main points, we refer to them as topic sentences. Okay, let's look at the third bullet here. You would have to list these main points. Okay, you may prefer to use your own words, which is very important in summary writing. I always encourage learners to use their own words because this shows that you actually understand what you've read. But it's also important that you keep the context intact. What do we mean by that? For example, the use of synonyms. That is also important. So instead of saying car, you can also say vehicle. So synonyms are very important, okay, to show that you gain an understanding. Okay. Now let's look at the next bullet. When you do your summary, please write the first draft of the summary by combining these ideas in a logical sense. So before you actually write your summary in the answer book, you can actually have the first draft and then play around with your ideas to actually ensure that the final draft is logical and it also has some form of sequence because we want your ideas to flow. Okay, let's quickly run through the next bullet. It is also important that you reread the draft and remove any unnecessary words or information, for example, adjectives and adverbs. Why do we do this? We do this because obviously we have a limited number of words. So it does not help to have unnecessary information in your summary. Always keep your points very brief and logical. And then obviously you would have to count the words. Usually when we do summary writing, we are also given a certain number of words that we need to adhere to. So for example, if I say summarize this passage using only 70 words or less, so it means therefore that you have to count your words so that they don't exceed the given maximum number. Okay, now the next step is to add or omit words or phrases in order to produce a succinct and condensed version of the original. When we omit, it is when we leave out or when we actually delete some of the unnecessary words. But as I said before, it is important that your version is not far-fetched from the original version of the text that you were given. Okay? Now let's quickly look at the next step. The next step would be to edit your summary for spelling or grammatical errors. So, like any other text, whether it's an essay or a letter or any other transactional text, it is important that you edit your work, because no one is perfect. Therefore, here and there you will find some spelling or grammatical mistakes. So the editing part is important so that such mistakes are actually dealt with and eliminated. Okay, now let's look at the next step. You would have to supply a short title if necessary. This is only applicable if the instructions actually tell you to do so, or if you are advised to do so. So the title again would be written in your own words, but again it mustn't be far-fetched from the original title in the text that you were provided with. Okay, now let us look at the last two steps. Now you would have to rewrite your final draft carefully, checking that you have used your own words. This is very important because a lot of students or learners usually copy and rewrite the text as it is without actually using their own words. So to use your own words is important. Why? Because it shows that you understand. It shows understanding. Okay? Now the last step would be to state the number of words in a bracket just below your summary. So the word count is important. Word count is important to show that you have actually counted your words and you know your summary. Okay, let me now give you a text that we will summarize together. I will go through the text and then we will obviously have to write the summary. But before we actually do that, let me just repeat what I've said so that everybody is on par and we all understand how do we write summaries. I will start again. A summary is a simplified and condensed account. Okay, this simply means that you don't have to use big words when you do your summary. You can do your summary using everyday words. Okay, and then you will be required to reduce a given extract or text to a certain number of words. If I give you 5 paragraphs, or 7 paragraphs, obviously you would have to summarize it or reduce it using only 7 sentences or any number of sentences given to you through the instructions. Okay? Now, you would only focus on the main ideas or main points when you do your summary. Where do we find those main ideas? Where do we find those main points? We find them in the topic sentence. Topic sentence. What is the topic sentence? The topic sentence is usually the first sentence or the last sentence of the paragraph, because a lot of writers usually have their topic sentences as I've mentioned before. But it is very rare, or should I say, good writers usually put their topic sentence anyway. But in most cases, we can find them in the first sentence or the last sentence. That is where we find our main points. Secondly, you would have to eliminate unnecessary information such as repetition, explanations, descriptions, and quotations. Especially quotations, because quotations take up a lot of words, so we don't have time to use quotations when we do summaries. Okay? And then by using your own words, this suggests that you understand the passage. So if I give you a particular passage, it is also important to interpret it in your own words. But again, I repeat, when you use your own words, don't differ from the actual passage. Okay? Now, the next bullet, this is a reported statement, therefore, it is written in the past tense. Our summaries should always be kept in the past tense because it is reported speech. And then let's look at the techniques once more. We said when we do our summaries, we read the passage carefully in order to gain a general overview of the content. Okay. Secondly, we reread the passage and underline the key sentence in each paragraph. Okay. And then this is often the first sentence of the paragraph, and what follows merely substantiates it. So, for example, if you have a statement in the first sentence, the reasons why you say so, the information you use to support what you said, those are just there to substantiate your statement. And then a lot of writers use statistics, others perhaps use quotations and so on to actually support what they say. So our focus will not be on the reasons why they are saying so, but on the statements they are actually saying, because we are looking for main points or main ideas. Okay? The next step is to list these main points that I'm talking about. How do we list them? Obviously, you would have to use the numbering system and not bullets. So you would use 1, 2, 3, 4 until 7, or you would listen or follow the instruction. Other instructions may say use 6 or 5 bullet points, so you would obviously have to follow that instruction. But usually we use 7 points, so you would need to list them numerically. And then you may prefer to use your own words, but keep to the context or keep the context intact. Okay, so I think that point was very clear. And then reread the draft and remove any unnecessary words or information, for example, adjectives and adverbs. And then the next step would be to count the words. And I mentioned earlier on that usually we are required to use no more than or not more than 70 words. And then you would have to add or leave out words or phrases in order to produce succinct and condensed version of the original. Why do we do this? We do so because we are interpreting the text in our own words. Okay? The next step would be to edit our summary. Why do we edit the summary? We edit the summary because, first of all, we are looking for spelling mistakes, and therefore we need to eliminate such. And secondly, we are also looking for grammatical errors which may have occurred. So when we submit the final draft of our summary, it shouldn't have spelling or grammatical mistakes. The next step, we said we have to supply a short title for our summary if the instruction allow. So if the instructions allow, you would use your own title. And then we rewrite our final draft carefully and we check that we have used our own words. And I said we use our own words because that is to show an understanding. Okay, the last bullet that I wanted to share with you was that we need to state the number of words in bracket just below our summary. So when we have written the summary, right at the bottom, we need to indicate in brackets the number of words we have used, because the person who's going to mark your summary will obviously count the number of words you used to ensure that you did follow the instruction. Now I'm going to have an activity to do, and that obviously would be to summarize a text. It's a very short text. We would summarize it together. Okay? So the text will follow, but before we do so, let us just look at the information or the instructions. First of all, let's look at the keywords that we are going to be looking into when we do this particular text. Okay, we need to know what do we mean by a debut album. And then they say a debut album is a first recording of an artist. So when an artist releases an album for the very first time, that is a debut album. And then the second word or the second keyword that we need to learn in order for us to do the summary that we are about to do later on is the word promotion. Promotion simply means to market your product. Okay, so let's go through the activity. Before you start writing a summary, skim the heading and the text first. Okay, the topic sentence in each paragraph contains the main idea of that paragraph. Okay, so when we say skim, we simply mean you look at the text. You simply look at the text, or you look at important information that is visible to you. Okay, you don't read it word for word, but you look at the important information, things like the title, the subtitle, highlighted words, bolded words, and so on and so forth. Okay, now the topic sentence in each paragraph contains the main idea of that particular paragraph. Remember I said the topic sentence is either the first sentence or the last sentence of the paragraph. In the topic sentence, what do we find? We find our main ideas. In the topic sentence, that is where we find our main ideas. Okay? And then please try to keep your sentences as simple as possible. Don't try to use big words when you do your summary, because remember, you are not summarizing for yourself, but you are actually summarizing for someone who might have not had the opportunity to read the entire passage, but they must be able to understand what you've read. So please use simple words as much as it is possible. And then remember, the purpose of your summary influences its content. Usually, you are also expected to write a heading. The heading, remember earlier on we said we can provide our own heading using our own words, but it must relate to the text that we would be summarizing. Okay, and then please note, if your summary is too long, you need to cut down on words, meaning you need to reduce your words. Okay? So for example, in the first draft, if you found out that you used 100 words instead of 70 words, you would need to rewrite your summary and then reduce some of those words. And then here is an example of how to reduce your words. If, for example, you wrote the band member who played the guitar, and you used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words to describe that particular person, you can actually reduce that sentence by using only 2 words, and then you would refer to that person who played the guitar as the guitarist. So you've now used 2 words instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. It's also very important because we are going to count the number of words at the end of our summary. Okay, let's look at today's activity. We are going to have to summarize a passage, and then the passage below, which we are going to refer to later on, is an album review that appeared in a newspaper. Remember I said usually when we summarize, we take texts from newspapers, from magazines, or from even books. Okay, so this one comes from a newspaper. The artist will visit your school and you have been asked to introduce her to the school. And then write down 7 important facts. 7 important facts, okay, about the artist that you can use in your introduction. So you have a situation where you are going to read this particular passage, and then using only 7 points, you would have to introduce this person to your school. So you don't have the whole 30 or 20 minutes to read the passage to the audience, but you only have a limited time to introduce her. So that's why we would only need 7 points. Let's quickly look at the instructions. Instructions are very important. Very important, because this is what markers use when they mark your summary. Number 1, you would have to list 7 points in full sentences using no more than 70 words. Okay, so the instruction needs 7 points and 70 words. Please do not exceed 70 words. Okay, and then when you use your sentences, it is important that you write them in full. So your sentence must begin with a capital letter and it must end with a full stop. So that would show that it is a full sentence. Number 2, number your sentences from 1 to 7. So when you do your summary, you will not use bullets like this. It's wrong. But instead you would have to number them like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not bullets. Okay? So the marker will also be very strict when marking your summary. The third one, please write only 1 point per line. So you would not have to have 3 or 2 points in one line. Please keep your sentences very brief and to the point by using only 1 fact per line. So you would need 1 fact, okay? And then the 4th instruction says, use your own words. Remember I said we should use our own words as much as possible because we need to show understanding. This shows that you understand what you have read. Understand, okay? The 5th instruction says, include a heading. Okay, this also refers to what we talked about earlier on when we said we can use our own words to have our own heading, but the heading must relate to the topic. It must be relevant to the topic, okay? And then the 6th and last instruction says, indicate the total number of words you have used in brackets at the end of your summary. For example, if you've used 60 words, you would indicate in brackets right at the bottom. Please do not lie when you indicate the total number of words. If you've used 75 words, okay, don't say you used 60 words because the marker will count. And remember, to avoid this, you would have to correct it in the first draft before you submit your final draft. Okay, let's now look at the notes that we have here on my left. When you write the names of songs, you put them in quotation marks. When you write the title of a CD, you underline it. So it's very much important that we understand this particular note before we get into our summary or the text that we are going to summarize. Now let's look at the text that we would be focusing on. Okay. It's an album review. Okay, an album review, it's when a journalist or a newspaper or a magazine journalist, when they write a story about an album that has been released by an artist. So they say it's an album review, and the name of the album is Izwi Lam by Nondumiso Tembe. That is the artist. Okay, this is our artist, and then this is the album, the name of the album. Okay. Let's quickly go through the text, and we would have some time to summarize the text. It takes a special kind of artist to win over local supporters of Afro, soul, and jazz. Here's an artist who might just do it. Nondumiso Tembe has the potential to fill up festivals and club lounges. She spent quite a while in the US. Her attempts to break into the saturated but daunting US pop market may have failed, but she realized she could lay a better foundation for her career back home in KwaZulu-Natal. Her album, or her debut album, Izwi Lam, which means my voice, couldn't start off any better than with Azania, that's the name of the song, in which she sings seemingly stripped of any pretense about her country of birth. I took you for granted and wanted to be like them, more beautiful, Azania, uyikaya lam, uwumphefumulo wam, inhliziyo yam, Azania, you are my home, you are my soul, my heart, she sings. Tembe sounds even more honest and captivating when she sings in her mother tongue, Zulu. In Masibuyeleni, she pleads with her generation to embrace their past and roots. I believe this beautiful artist and well-packaged album will need good promotion, or perhaps an even bigger record label to help her get into the consciousness of local Afro, soul, and jazz music lovers. Let's quickly read it for the second and last time, and then we would summarize it. Album review, and the name of the album is Izwi Lam by Nondumiso Tembe, that is the artist. It takes a special kind of artist to win over local supporters of Afro, soul, and jazz. Here is an artist who might just do it. Nondumiso Tembe has the potential to fill up festivals and club lounges. She spent quite a while in the US. Her attempts to break into the saturated but daunting US pop market may have failed, but she realized she could lay a better foundation for her career back home in KwaZulu-Natal. Her debut album, Izwi Lam, which means my voice, couldn't start off any better than with Azania, in which she sings seemingly stripped of any pretense about her country of birth. I took you for granted and wanted to be like them, more beautiful. Azania, you are my home, you are my soul, my heart, she sings. Tembe sounds even more honest and captivating when she sings in her mother tongue, Zulu. In Masibuyeleni, she pleads with her generation to embrace their past and roots. I believe this beautiful artist and well-packaged album will need good promotion, or perhaps an even bigger record label to help her get into the consciousness of local Afro, soul, and jazz music lovers. Okay, now that is our text. and obviously the next task would be to summarize it. Okay, now we will quickly write our summary and then do follow all the instructions that we were given. Remember, one of the instructions was that we should use full sentences. 70 words, okay, was the other instruction. We shouldn't exceed 70 words. We can have any number of words, but not more than 70 words. And then, obviously, we would have to include our heading and then have to write down the number of words we used at the bottom in brackets. Okay. First of all, we need to have our own heading or title for this particular summary, or this particular text rather, sorry. So we would say, okay, the album was Izwilam by Nondumiso Tembe, and then obviously this was an album review, so we would say a new album by Nondumiso. Sorry, Nondumiso. Okay, we don't have to include the same name because we have a limited number of words. All right, we are going to summarize this particular passage, and at this point I would invite all of you who are watching to actually draft your own summaries and would compare them with the one that I will have captured down, and then we would come back shortly after the break. All right, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed writing your summaries. I have also written my own summary, and we are going to compare our summaries, and then we would obviously mark our own summaries, or if you have a friend next to you, you are more than welcome to actually exchange your work so that we ensure that our friends adhered or followed the instructions. Okay, let's now look at this particular one that I have here. It's my own summary, okay? So remember, the title of the text that we read was Album Review Izwilam by Nondumiso Tembe. And I said here in my own version, a new album by Nondumiso Tembe. So it is also correct because it's not far-fetched from the topic. So it relates, okay, to the topic. Okay, let's now check the first point I have here. And I said, only a talented artist has support of soul and jazz fans. Okay, where did I get that particular point? I used the very first sentence from our text, which read, it takes a special kind of an artist to win over local supporters of Afro, soul, and jazz. So I actually took that particular sentence, interpreted it in my own words, and then tried to summarize it. And as you can see here, I indicated that I used 10 words. This also helps me to keep the word count, because when I have 10 words that I've already used, it means I am now left with 60 words. So my following points should not exceed 60 words. Let's now look at the second point I have. And here I say, Tembe, that is the name of the artist, tried recording her album in the US but couldn't. And obviously now I also used 9 words here. Okay, so where did I get that particular point from? I took it from the text in the second paragraph where we said she spent quite a while in the US. Her attempt to break into the daunting US pop market failed, but she realized she could lay a better foundation for herself back here at home. So I summarized the whole text by mentioning the fact that she tried to record her album in the US, but obviously she couldn't. So I used 9 words, okay? So I am also keeping the word count. The third point I have here, I said the first song on her album is Azania, and here I used 8 words. Okay, where did I get it from? I also got it from the third paragraph. And then in the third paragraph, the very first sentence says, her debut album, My Voice, couldn't start off any better than with Azania, in which she sings, seemingly stripped of any pretense about her country of birth. So instead of writing the whole sentence with those many words, I actually used 8 words to summarize the whole sentence. And then the first song on her album is Azania. I used these inverted commas because in the instruction that we read earlier on, they said whenever we write names of songs, we should use them. Okay. The fourth point I have, I say here, she sounds more convincing when she sings in Zulu. She sounds more convincing when she sings in Zulu. And then obviously I got it from the fourth paragraph. And then it reads, Tembe sounds even more convincing and honest when she sings in her mother tongue Zulu. In one of the songs, she pleads with the generation to embrace their past and roots. Tembe sounds even more honest and captivating when she sings in her mother tongue Zulu. She pleads with her generation to embrace their past and roots. So instead of saying their past and roots, I only used one word, which is heritage. Okay? So that is found where in the fifth point, which says in one of her songs, asks the youth to respect their heritage. One of her songs asks the youth to respect their heritage. So instead of using the word plead, I use the word ask. Instead of using pleads, I use the word asks. Okay? And then roots and past, I used heritage. Roots and past, I only used one word, heritage. Okay? And then I used 11 words, as you can see. Why did I use 11 words? Because in one of the sentences that came before here, you can see I actually did not use more than 10 words in that particular sentence, which gave me an opportunity to actually use the other word. Okay? The sixth point I have here, I say, her album deserves good marketing. Obviously, these points come from the paragraphs I have. In each paragraph, I'm taking the main point, which comes from the topic sentence, and I then interpret it in my own words. So the sixth paragraph, which says, her album deserves good marketing, actually read, I believe this beautiful artist and well-packaged album will need good promotion, or perhaps an even bigger record label. So what did I say? I said her album deserves good marketing. Instead of using the word promotion, I used the word marketing. Why? Because I must use my own words. Okay? So I'm actually showing that I do understand what I read, which is important for you to do because markers will always try to see if you understand what you wrote. The last point I have here says, she also deserves a huge recording deal. But in the text it read, I believe this beautiful artist and well-packaged album will need good promotion or perhaps an even bigger record label. So instead of taking the word as it is, bigger, I said huge. So instead of rewriting the word bigger, I actually used a synonym there. I said huge. And if I count all my words, I actually, come up with the total, and then the total is written here at the bottom in brackets as we were instructed, 59 words, because we are not supposed to use more than 70. So we cannot use more than 70 words. Let's quickly look at my summary once more, and then obviously you would compare it with the one you have in front of you from your friend and check if they actually did as the instructions told us to do so. The topic read, new album by Nondumiso Tembe. My first point said, only a talented artist has support of soul and jazz fans. The second one I said, Tembe tried recording her album in the US but couldn't. So as I read these sentences, please take note. Instead of writing her name and surname, I only used her surname. So I only said Tembe instead of Nondumiso Tembe. Why? Because I am keeping the word count in mind. So adding another word or her other name would actually mean I am losing some of the given words that I'm supposed to use. And then there are some abbreviations I used here. So instead of writing the United States of America, I actually used an abbreviation, the US. Okay, so when you do your summaries, it is important to actually use synonyms and abbreviations where you can. And then the third point I have here, I said the first song on her album is Azania. Okay, the fourth one said she sounds more convincing when she sings in Zulu. And then if I compare that with the paragraph from the text, which actually read, Tembe sounds even more honest and captivating when she sings in her mother tongue. So instead of saying more honest and captivating, I just used the word convincing. Okay? And then the fifth one says, one of her songs asks the youth to respect their heritage. I actually explained it earlier on, and I said, instead of using the word pleads, I said asks. Okay? And then instead of using two words, roots and past, I said heritage. So that is just to reduce the number of words. So I reduced the number of words. And then here I used a synonym. Remember we said synonym. Remember, we said synonyms are words with similar meaning, but they are spelled and pronounced differently. So I use the word asks instead of pleads. Okay. Where was I now? The 6th point, I said her album deserves good marketing. Here is another example of a synonym. Okay. Instead of saying promotion, I said marketing. Okay. The last one, I said she also deserves a huge recording deal. So in the text it read bigger record deal. So I said huge recording deal. So I also used another example of a synonym here. Okay, and then when I counted my words, which I will show you how to do in just a minute, I actually came up with 59. Let's look at it for the last time, and then I will wrap up the lesson. So if you add your words, you should actually come up with not more than 70 words. So in my first sentence, I have 10 words, okay? And then 10 plus 9, okay, would give me 19, plus 8 would give me 27, if I'm correct, plus 9 would give me 36, okay, plus 11 would give me 47, plus 5 would give me 52, okay, plus 7, I think that gives me 59. Sorry, it gives me 59, okay. Now, let me just wrap up the lesson, and then we can perhaps go out there and show the world that we have now learned how to do our summaries. Remember, we said when we do our summaries, it is important to list our points using 1, 2, 3 up until 7, as I did here. Okay? You are not allowed to use bullets or stars, little stars, or anything like that. No, that's wrong. And then when we do our summaries, we must use full sentences. A sentence, remember, begins with a capital letter and ends with a full stop. Okay, those are full sentences that I'm talking about. And then we shouldn't use more than 70 words when we do our summaries. We should write only 1 point per line, so I cannot have more than 2 facts per line. Where do we get our points? I said we get our points from topic sentences. The topic sentences are those sentences which are found at the beginning or at the last of our paragraphs. So the first sentence or the last sentence in a paragraph is usually a topic sentence. The topic sentence, again, another explanation would be the most important sentence in a paragraph. Okay? So that is where we get our points and facts. And then we would obviously use those points and facts to do our summaries by interpreting them in our own words. Remember, we said when we use our own words, that shows that we actually understand the text. Okay? So when we use our own words again, we must try to use simple words and not go for difficult words or big words that people wouldn't understand immediately. So your summary must be read very simply with understanding. Someone mustn't find it difficult to understand what you've written. And then we said we can have the heading, or as others call it, the title, using our own words. So you check the heading of the text that we have provided, and you kind of change it into your own words, but it must also relate to the topic. It mustn't be far-fetched, as we said earlier on. And then lastly, when we do our summaries, we must indicate the total number of words at the bottom in brackets. Okay, and then I think that wraps up our lesson for today. And please continue to do more research and ask your teachers, your elder ones, on how to actually do summaries. But with the information that I've provided you with, I think this is the simplest way of doing your summaries. But again, this is the simplest way that would ensure that you have full marks for summaries. Thank you very much for your attention this afternoon. I hope to see you again. Thank you very much. It was a good lesson. I enjoyed myself. I hope you did too. Bye.